So I was asked in one of the comments to a video I did earlier to show a couple of techniques on how to remove rivets. So what I've done is I've set up 4 rivets here in a line. We're going to show different ways to remove them. They all pretty much boil down to the same thing, just removing the stock at the back and punching them through. And there's just a couple of different techniques and tools you can use to make that happen. So the first thing to talk about that I use at the end of each one of these centre punches. These will go onto the removed shank and push through. Got an automatic centre punch, does the work for you with a spring mechanism in there, but they don't have a lot of weight to them very often. Or a normal centre punch that you just give a tap with a hammer and the job's done. There's all sorts of tools you can use, files or a power file in this case, to remove this excess. What you've got to do is you've got to take this back off and push it through. It's one of the reasons I like, if I can, to use a washer when you do the riveting, because then if you've got to remove anything, you don't damage, or you minimise the damage on the parent material, and the washer comes off. All you do is, if it's a period piece, rather than use a modern engineering washer like that, you can just use a washer that you make yourself, quite straightforward. So what I'm going to do is just remove that. Equally, I could have this on a flat surface and use a file across the surface just as easily as I can use this power file. A fantastic tool. This particular one's a Black & Decker power file, but they're brilliant for this sort of work, and they can get right into some quite tight spaces with this. So we'll remove the excess and then I'll show you what I do after that. So sometimes the washer will fly off as you're doing work like this, other times it'll just stay like that. As long as you've taken it down to a smooth surface, so you're not still working the shank of the rivet, rather the whole thing smooth, that should now, if we're lucky, go through. You can see I can't see the rivet shape. Now in this case I know it's in the middle, but sometimes you won't know where the rivet shank is. And if that's the case, just flip it over and give it a tap on the rivet head. And it starts to expose. I can just about see it there, the shape of the rivet in the middle there. So now what we do is we just tap that out, and that's one of the rivets removed. So what I do here is choose the hole on the anvil. Any size hole in a piece of metal will do. You can even do this on a wooden surface, but it works better with a bit of return weight off an anvil. Sight the hole, if you can get it flush. It's not letting me here, but just get it over that space. Get your punch in the middle and give it a tap. There you go. The rivet's been removed. We've moved the surface material there a little bit. That's no big deal. Just give it a gentle tap back, and you're ready to go with whatever repairs or changes you're making. If you don't have an anvil hole to use like this, I found this piece of metal in a scrap workshop. A scrap merchant's. And it just had these holes in it. I've no idea what it was before. I've drilled some in there for rivet sets when I was early days going. But you can punch rivets through that as well. Different sizes, different shapes there to make your life easy. Anything will do that you have that's a good strong stout surface. You can push it through. You could even use the edge here of a vise. Just put the work over, push it through. So anything will do. You don't need an anvil to do this particular piece of work. Now, instead of using a power file, they can be a relatively specialist bit of equipment, but most workshops have a grinder. In them you can use pretty much any grinding disc you like. Here's an old grinding disc that I've got. I find these are a bit too large though, a bit unwieldy, and you can easily mar the surface of the material. So what I tend to like to use, you can get these little sort of 1mm slitting discs from most places. Absolutely nothing to them. Don't buy the cheap ones. I find they just disappear like they're made out of pencil lead, and you'll be through them in no time. They cost about 50p to £1 a piece, but they last a good long time. What I do is get one of those in the grinder and just work the back of the rivet there with it, and do the same as we've just done. So we'll give that a try. So we've worked off the back of the rivet there. We can see we've still got the washer intact on this one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the wood bench here just to show that you don't need these anvils and bits and pieces to do jobs like this. They just make life a little simpler. So we'll get this removed off some of the holes I've punched into my desk here over the years and show you how that works. So here we are, we'll just offer it up over one of the holes where I've drilled in and I've been doing some work. Sight the centre punch, give it a stout couple of knocks. There we go. That's come out. Set that back down if it's important to. And there's another way of removing a rivet. You've now got to fish out your desktop. There we go. Now, grinders again could be considered a specialist piece of equipment. Can be relatively expensive, although I think you probably need to get one early days in your workshop. But if you've been putting holes into the material, then the likelihood is you have a drill in your workshop. Now, this isn't a technique I particularly like to use. I find it too fiddly, to be fair, and just find it easier to use the grinder if there's room for it. But what you can do with this is just sight a hole in the back there. Let's give that a flatten first. Just to help the drill bit get a bit of bite. And then what you can do is try and drill that out. I really don't like this technique, especially when I've got no power going to my drill. One moment. Right, now, there we go. I don't like this technique at all, but it is possible. Just about there. It's my drill bit disappearing into the drill because I didn't tighten it properly. Right, I think we're just about there now, so we'll give that a tap over on the anvil and we'll see how we get on. So there we go. Now I could probably tidy that back quite a bit more, but I want to try and damage the material, the parent material, a little bit with this action. So all we're going to do is offer up the centre punch. Excuse me a minute. There we go, he's just about coming out. Oh, so close. There it is. Now you can see what we've done here is we've caned this. Now this can happen when you take rivets out. It's not something you want to try and be doing, but it's not the end of the world for that piece of armour. The metal's just been pushed out, so you can just push it back down. So don't panic, just give it a couple of touches. Now you can see that you can set the material back with relative ease. It's a little bit mutilated compared to that one, but that would still take a rivet. If you needed to close it over, you can just keep peening around like I've shown in one of my other videos, and you can close that gap there. But in the meantime, that would take a rivet the same size as the one we've removed from it, so there's no need to panic if you do something like that. Just take it steady, touch it back, and everything will be just fine. Now, more often than not, one of the reasons you're taking something apart and taking the rivets off is because you've got some old tired leather that needs replacing, or the strap just needs moving a bit. And occasionally you'll find yourself in a bit of trouble, because what will happen is when you remove this with a grinder or any power tool, it'll heat the leather and probably wreck it. But you can, if you're just calm and slow and gentle with it, you can remove this stock without damaging the leather if you don't have replacement leather. Personally, I'd suggest always have leather on hand and replace it with a fresh one. You'll save yourself time. But just to show that it can be done, we're going to use the grinder for this one, which I'll plug back in a second, and we'll see if we can get it off without damaging the leather. So all we're going to do then, as we take this leather off, is soft sweeps, occasional sweeps with this. The air that's generated here can cool that down quite well, and if we're lucky, I've used a really thin piece of leather here to try and demonstrate this with, to make it as hard as possible for myself. We should be able to take this off without crisping up that leather too much, and we can reuse it afterwards. Fingers crossed. So a little bit of a slip there, just caught the leather, but it's only just on the surface, so we're all good. And we'll see if we can push that out now gently. Just disappear behind the camera for a moment, just give it a push. Just to show, so there's a couple of taps. We can see the rivet head starting to come away. If you don't want to keep tapping that because you're worried about damaging this material, you only need to go as far as it takes to get a set of snips underneath. This one isn't quite ready yet. Maybe not. Just under there. No, not quite ready yet. So we'll give it another couple of taps. So we go, the leather's come away. We'll look at that in just a second. But what I wanted to show was, you see the rivet's not come out. And you can keep hammering away like we did with this one, damage the material, or just get your snips in underneath, lift it out, set that back down, and you're done with that. But now to the leather itself. You can see there's no, just looking at that closely, it'll focus for us. There's no real heat discoloration there, it's not crisped up. That's just grime from before. So it is possible, you just need to take your time when you're going. So there you go, a quick video showing 4 techniques, which all amount to the same thing really, on how to remove rivets. Just take the stock off the back, gently, and then push them through with a centre punch, and pull them off the front with a set of pliers or snips like this. Easy as you like.